Zambia is my home. It is where I belong. I believe my dreams can turn into reality.
Welcome to the Anakazi Online Conversations. Today I have the pleasure of being joined by Chomba Mwansa, Bowa, who is the founder and director of Meraki Café. Chomba has 10 years of experience in the food and confectionery business, successful entrepreneur, and she is a phenomenal restaurator. She has left lasting memories on so many individuals, including my little ones, with her amazing cake baking and decorating skills. She's passionate about SME growth with the youth at the core and has facilitated enterprise development in line with this. Chomba is also a former banker and has banking experience at senior management level. My name is Mulenga Silwamba and I am the head of personal markets at Stanbic Bank. Welcome, Chomba, to Anakazi Online Conversations.
Thank you, Mulenga. I'm honored to be here and I'm very happy to share our experience as Meraki.
Great. So today's conversation, Chomba, is really about how Meraki has sustained itself during this pandemic. We do realize that there are many businesses that have really suffered as a result of the pandemic, and it's great to see you still standing. And we really just want to hear the experiences that you've had. And I do believe that there will be people listening in today who have had similar experiences and also that can learn from your experiences. How has it been for Meraki since the pandemic?
Well, Mulenga, as you know, we run a coffee shop, bakery and restaurant. So at the beginning of April, after the announcement was made to restrict movements and to restrict restaurants to operating on a takeaway basis only, obviously we had a huge impact in loss of customers visiting our businesses.
And you just had the new store opened up in Kabalonga, that beautiful store at Central Mall.
Thank you so much. Yes. So we had just opened a new store 3 months prior, and then COVID-19 happened at a time when we were just getting on our feet and getting into our groove, more so to say. We had just opened a new store at Kabalonga and getting into our groove, and then COVID-19 happened. So back to your question, how was the impact, or what was the impact? There was a huge, obviously expected drop in sales. People were staying home and avoiding moving out at all costs. So we immediately saw a drop in turnover in our sales, and this was across all our businesses, our business lines. That came as a huge shock and unexpected too, at a time when our projections were set to go a certain way. So the immediate impact that we saw was a drop in cash flow. Our revenues were reduced on almost all our business lines. And obviously some of our costs were fixed and there's nothing that we could really do about them. Whereas our income dropped significantly and we started having a few struggles with our cash flow. Also, aside from that, we had staffing issues to manage because obviously the trade had stopped. We had no customers coming in and we're in the service industry. There were no customers to serve. We had to start thinking of what are we going to do with our staff and how are we going to keep them, how are we going to keep them going, and things like that.
So tell me, how did that impact the business? You've spoken about your employees being affected. Did you have to do any restructuring? Was it a shift change? How did you manage that? How did you manage the employee issues that came with COVID?
Okay. So luckily, to date, we haven't had to let go of any of our members
Oh,
of
fantastic.
staff. So the teams are still all intact. But what we had to do is that we had to create shifts, weekly shifts, to run the shops with. So teams would interchange on a weekly basis so that everyone would come in to work for a week and then stay home another week, then come back the following week. But we also used the time that we had to do all the things we didn't have time to do in the normal course of business with our staff, matters like training and upskilling and things like that.
Well, that's fantastic. So you were making use of the time despite the COVID business, well, the COVID affecting the business.
That's right.
So coming back to you, Chomba, as an individual, I do know that even in your own individual capacity, you are one of our customers. How have you been impacted as Chomba, aside Meraki? How have you been impacted as a mother? And how have you been impacted as a wife in this COVID-19 new norm, as we're calling it?
Right. So on a personal level, because after the announcements for the closure or the partial closure of restaurants, I found that I had a lot of extra time that I never used to have before. So I used most of that time to spend with my family,
Fantastic.
catch up on some personal learnings, online trainings and things like that.
How is that going? I mean,
It's-
adult learning is not
I
for the
know.
faint-hearted.
I know, but it was good. I had so much time.
Great.
I had a lot of energy to do it. But I also used that time to upskill some things that we want to bring into the business a little bit later on. As a wife and mother, definitely more cooking.
That shouldn't be a
cooking
problem
and
in your home.
And a lot of homeschooling for the children.
How has that been going? How have you managed to homeschool, be a wife, and be the business owner? How is that? How are you finding the balance?
It was difficult to begin with because we had to find a rhythm that we could all work with. I mean, initially we were all so excited that we were all home, cooped up in the house together. But eventually we had to get a rhythm going. And I think that is what has really helped me to balance everything out. Setting timetables and rules and times for this and times for other things. With more time, obviously we've been able to fit in. I've been able to fit in all these things. We're super women.
Yes, we are. And I mean, you wouldn't be the founder and director of Meraki without being a superwoman. And we do applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you, Mulenga.
But also just really thinking about, you've spoken about how you've been thinking of the business differently during these COVID times. And I think it's interesting that you say you've been upskilling, training. Is this all part of a rebound strategy? Do you have a rebound strategy that you can share with us that I believe maybe others can learn from, and maybe just try and help us understand how it can be done, if it can be done in these difficult times, because it all seems so vague in terms of where we're going. So how have you thought around a rebound strategy, if any?
So Mulenga, the way we looked at this is to look at it as an opportunity for something else. We have to keep our hopeful hats on that
Indeed.
this thing is going to pass and we should come out better for it. And obviously one of the things that we have more now is time on our hands. So what we did is we used this time to refresh the menu, get the new winter menu out, tested and ready for use, and we're now using it. Like I said, we upskilled for the bakery and for the restaurant, the service. We did our trainings during this time. Also, we had more time to work on the strategic direction that we're taking with some of our packaged products, which are retailing in the retail stores like ShopRite and
Fantastic.
Pick n Pay.
Congratulations.
So we've just added another line now during COVID.
That's great news. I wonder, did you ever think of doing this before?
Yes. So the products were in the pipeline. And initially the plan was to launch around August of 2020. But we have been able to launch now. And we're sending out the products into the supermarkets, and they're available at our Kabalonga store at the moment. So that is cake premixes. I'm sure you've used one of those before.
I'm yet to
Okay.
I've actually seen it. I do like your page on Facebook. So I'm yet to actually use that if I can find the time. But I'm looking forward to that. I think it's an amazing innovation, and I can't wait to try out your products. If I can make a cake like Meraki's cake without coming to Meraki, I think that would be great.
Great. So yes, like I was saying, it's we've used this time to improve what we can during this time, so that we're ready to run when everything goes back to the old normal that we're all longing for, the old normal.
So Chomba, how have you been managing around costs? I know you've spoken about how your employees were impacted. Did you have any salary adjustments? Have they got any obligations which are now being brought back to you where they ask for help around meeting their obligations? How have you really managed that? Do you have any leases that still need to be serviced despite the reduction in revenue that you've spoken to? How have you managed that?
Mulenga, like I said earlier, the business, like any other business, would have fixed costs that you cannot avoid if you want to stay in business. Things like rentals and and then there are other payments, like payments to suppliers, then payments to the staff as well, which still have to be paid regardless of you not receiving the income. So all these costs would have to be paid regardless of how low your turnover has dropped. Okay, so we get our suppliers calling for their payments, and then you have to negotiate for that, and that is where good relationships come into play. And then you have your staff coming in. For example, I need an advance to pay my rent or to pay this and that. So these are all costs that regardless of our the drop in turnover, we still have to deal with as a business. And it's been quite a challenging thing to manage,
right,
and come out of it.
Yeah, and I think what's important to note is the bank has had to change its position. I mean, we now offer COVID assist to our customers. You as a business, for example, if you have a loan with us, we're able to offer you a moratorium, which is simply just a payment holiday of up to 3 months. And it's really case by case, because every case is different. Every business is going through the COVID-19 in its own way. And what we have as a bank is we are here to assist our customers. And it's a case of just staying close to our customers first and foremost, which is very important to really understand how the impact has affected the customer. Then we have, solutions around working capital, where we can actually have conversations around that in a different manner to the normal application. But we also have extension of overdraft facilities, and again, speaking about working capital, because you might not be expecting to end your overdraft. The expiry date might not tie in with your obligations, your current obligations, right, because of the way businesses and the world has changed. So, and then on the employee front, you spoke about your employees. We have, for your employees, I know you spoke about your employees earlier, we have employee value banking, which allows for you to actually manage your employees. and when I say manage, I'm not saying you'll be doing the day-to-day banking management, but it comes into play because under this MOU, we're able to have, services offered to your staff that probably if they walk through the door, they wouldn't be able to access. Things like facilities to loans, special rates, and so forth. But also it helps, like now with COVID, for those customers that do have an MOU with us, we're having conversations at the business level, where if a company, say, is struggling for salaries, we then look at any borrowing customers under the MOU, under the scheme, and apply a moratorium. Obviously, with their consent, we then apply a moratorium with an extension on their debt, and at least they can then, deal with the cash flow impact, because you can't expect them to fully service a loan if they're not getting paid, especially because the loan is based on their salary. So I think what's good to note is, I know, Chomba, you're very close to the bank on the personal and business front, but it's for the rest of the viewers, it's also good for them to note that the bank is alive and aware of what's going on, and there are solutions. And what's important is that you contact the bank if they haven't contacted you already.
And I personally think that's fantastic, and it will really help to cushion the costs that businesses are having to undergo at the moment, especially with their staff. And just a product like that is quite motivating to employees to have through their employer. And obviously it will come in very useful during this time.
Yeah, and I know you are a fan of our Enterprise Online.
Oh yes, I am.
And you've been selling it on our behalf.
Been using
You've been our agent.
Enterprise Online since the time I was introduced to it about 3 years ago. A fantastic service, fantastic. I don't need to go to the bank to get transfers done and all these things. I just do that online. It's a fantastic platform.
And I suppose it's helped in the COVID times, especially that you don't have to go into the branch.
Yes.
To do your salaries and transactions. I hope you've found it beneficial. Absolutely. With the social distancing.
Yes.
During these difficult times.
Yeah, it's been an absolutely fantastic platform. And like I said, we're using it to pay pretty much everything, including our suppliers, all our salaries, our rentals. It's fantastic.
That's good to hear. So tell me, Chomba, you are evidently a successful businesswoman, successful entrepreneur. I know that there are a lot of women out there, and I know this because I belong to several women groups in some shape or form, that are looking for freedom into starting up their own businesses. And these are working individuals, and these are individuals that maybe have started something, have failed, and are really trying to get back and don't know how to get back into it. So what is the message you have for them? Because I know you are a good example, because you were in your banking career when you decided to make that bold step to leave your 8 to 5 to venture into your cake baking business. Started from there. Right. And now we have Meraki, and it's a brand name. So what advice could you give women out there who are looking to start a business, or who are stuck in what to do next?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to share that it's very fulfilling to find and do something that you love and own that space. Is absolutely fulfilling, and it's a fantastic place to be in. Now, to get there, you need to start with purpose. Any venture that you go into is, why am I doing this? Do I have a skill in it? Do I have a flair for it? And would I want to do this long term? Even if it means starting small as I can start today. It starts from there. where many of us go wrong is we want to do what we've seen someone else doing, and we think that we can also do it. But usually the case is with someone who's successful in doing something is because they already have a flair for it, and then they just build on that skill. So you need to start there first, and then start slowly, start small, start where you are today. That means investing in that skill. And that means obviously you have to start buying equipment, take classes if you have to. You're pouring into that thing that needs to come out of you. And you have to take it a day at a time. It's a commitment. It's a long-term commitment. It's not a journey for 1 month or 1 year and then it ends there and then you start looking for something else. It works best if it's a long-term commitment. I'm going to do this. By the end of this year, I'm going to be here. By the end of year 5, this is where I want to be. And then by the end of year 10, this is where I want to be. And you take committed steps to get where you are. You take committed steps to get to where you want to be. So I would say absolutely go for your dream. Find what it is first of all, go for your dream. Find out what your dream is and make a commitment to it. Even if it starts small, it doesn't matter. It's yours, and it will grow.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Start small.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to start big, and sometimes we get that wrong.
And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And when I started this journey before we became Meraki, I was doing food and cakes from my home. So even while I was in the banks, I worked in the banks for a total of 13 years. For
time.
8 of those, I was doing this thing.
Wow.
And it's only when I stepped out and said, I'm going to make this thing grow, is when everybody knew what Meraki was. But it had foundations that were 8 years old already.
Right.
Yeah. So even if you're starting small, it doesn't matter. Eventually you get where you're going. If you know where you want to go, you will get there.
Thank you for that advice. And I hope the women out there have listened in and taken note of how you started off. So start small, we're hearing, and actually build on your dream. I think that's a key thing for me as well. I know exactly what you mean about how people will go out and say, oh, Chomba's making cakes, let me start to make cakes, and it's not my passion. So, now you're making the cake mixer, by the way.
Right.
So you might find people trying to make cakes. And if it's not your dream, I guess it's not your dream.
Yeah.
But can you make it your dream? Can you work on making it your dream?
Business has to be authentic. It has to be the real deal. Otherwise, when the problems and the challenges and the struggles come, you're going to throw it out the window and walk the other way. But if this is really in you, there's no way you're going to throw it out, because it's like you're throwing out a part of you.
I like that.
So yes, you can make it work for some time, but I think it has to be in you for you
it's
to
not
stay
sustainable.
the long run. Right.
Okay. But I think that's great advice, and thank you very much for that advice. And this is coming obviously from someone who's been there and done it. And I'm sure you've had years of seeing where you're going and what you've done and how you're going to change things. You're speaking about the changes that are coming through now. And I think that's great to always see the opportunity and always grow accordingly, because I guess the way you started off is not the way is not the way you are at this point.
Absolutely
So you've got to evolve. I notice you're using a lot of social media. I know someone who drove don't know how many miles to come for your coffee, chocolate and vanilla cake the other day.
I know the one.
And found the last slice being bought, by the way. So that was quite heartbreaking for the person. How are you dealing with social media? How are you... Because clearly it's working. If that person was willing to drive all those miles to get to Meraki, how are you using social media?
So we're on social media a lot. And it's our way of trying to stay in touch with our customers, trying to show them what exciting products we have in store, what's coming up next, what they should look out for. But also, we also want to be in customers' minds. You know, we want them to think about us and connect with us as well. Yes, so social media, we have a website up as well. And I think you cannot do without social media in this age if you want to communicate to the wider audience. And obviously, it's way cheaper to communicate to thousands of people at a certain time without spending so much money.
And I hope you're able to track it, to track the actual impact
Yes.
of social media. Because that would be good to see how you're actually doing, how the business is being impacted by social media. But I can see that you have done a lot. Like I said earlier, I follow you on Facebook, and I see you're doing a lot of work there. And I think this is the way to go in these COVID times as a business. You know, this is why I keep on saying you've got to almost innovate and you're continuously evolving the business as you're moving
Right.
in your journey. So Chomba, one of the things I have realized is the new norm comes with fear. I'm not sure if you're getting the impact on customers being uncomfortable coming through to the restaurant, not because of Meraki, but because of the virus. So I'm wondering if that has come through, and if it has, how are you putting people's minds at rest that you are compliant, you are taking the restrictions that have been placed by the government of the Republic of Zambia, and so the social distancing around COVID-19. How are you ensuring that you are compliant in all forms, be it from a kitchen right through to where I sit down when I come into Meraki?
At the time that the announcement was made to allow restaurants to open to the public again in May last month, we had to go through some sort of certification process with the local authorities. And they came in and they checked that our premises had enough hand washing and sanitizing facilities, and that our standards of hygiene were above the standard that they expect. We've even gone above and beyond that to make sure that we actually disinfect everything, including door handles and countertops and tables and chairs every night. So yes, we can put customers at ease. They can feel very comfortable when they come that our hygiene level is above standard, above the levels expected. And if you've been to our Kabulonga store, customers can actually see through right through to the kitchen.
Oh, that's good.
And see that everything is absolutely on point where hygiene and cleanliness are concerned. We have sanitizers all over the shop. We're observing the distancing between tables and just making sure that we're following all the rules. Everyone has to come in masked. Yes, you can take off your mask to eat, but after that it has to go back on. Yes, but a lot of customers are now coming out slowly, so we're very happy to see them back in our stores. It puts a big smile on our faces, and we just want to assure them that everything will be on point when they're there.
Fantastic. That's very reassuring, and I'm glad that you've taken all precautionary measures and put them into place in the store, just allowing that comfort. And I think this is not the time to take it personal. It's just the times we're in.
It's what it is.
Exactly. So I'm hoping that all the social media engagements will make it easier for people to still come through, to continue coming through. And before we know it, we'll be back to the old norm in terms of how the restaurant operated on a customer level. So Chomba, it's been absolutely great having you on the show today. Thank you very much for joining us on Anakazi Online Conversations. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Very insightful for myself, by the way. And I'm hoping for the viewers that have actually tuned in today. But wishing you all the very best. And I do know that you're you have all these plans, and I look forward to seeing all these plans actually come to fruition. So thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you very much, Mulenga. It was a pleasure.
So viewers, that's it. Today we were joined by Chomba Mwansa, founder and director of Meraki Café in Lusaka. It was such a pleasure having her on the show today. But stay tuned for more episodes coming through on Anakazi Online Conversations.